Hello everybody, I'm back, so let's not waste any time. Today we're going to make this into this using very simple commands. There's going to be absolutely nothing complicated, it's all math. This totally didn't take me 4 days to program properly. I totally didn't make 6 videos I had to delete and start from scratch. It's super simple, you'll see. Now let's just jump into it. So the first thing we're going to do, like I said the last time, is we're going to grab all this tiles parameters. We're going to move it inside the loops that we have, and that will allow us to basically calculate different parameters for each row and each column. Now we're going to do something else, this horizontal space and vertical space. Since we're going to be messing with it, we're going to move it over here. Replace this 64 with horizontal space because our horizontal space is 64. And replace the 32 over here with vertical space. This will allow us to change one variable and get effect everywhere on the map. Yeah. So if I run the game now, there should be absolutely no difference between what we had before and what we have right now. And as you can see, there is absolutely no difference between what we had before and what we're having right now. We're going to start messing with those horizontal and vertical spacing variables. The first thing we're going to do is add I, meaning the number of the row, to our vertical spacing. This means that every row will be a little bit more spaced out from the previous one. And if you see here, every other row is more spaced out from the one before. Yeah, we will do scaling of the tiles, of everything. So this will allow us to have larger tiles. I'm going to increase the spacing between each tile. So now that we have easily visible space between every row, I'm going to start to recalculate the horizontal spacing between each tile. That way, later on when I start scaling each tile of the map, we're going to have enough space for the different tiles to grow into. Basically, they don't overlap each other. So since our tiles are basically 2:1 ratio, they're 64 by 32, the horizontal spacing should be about twice the size as the vertical spacing. So the logic is the horizontal spacing should be 4 times the number of the row they are on. So the larger rows, meaning the lower rows on the map, will have the larger spacing, meaning more spacing between them because they will look larger. And this is exactly what we wanted to see over here. Yeah, the logic works pretty much perfectly, except for this one column, which is column number 4. The map should be mirrored, horizontally mirrored, and it's not. The symmetry line should be between column 3 and column 4, and we can see on the screen that it's not. The symmetry line is pretty much on top of the column 4. The thing that we can do to mitigate that is recalculate our top and side variables. So let me very quickly do that. I'm going to add to the top variable 2 times I and to the side variable 4 times I. I is pretty much the number of the row we are on, making sure that lower rows have larger distances. We're having a tiny little overlapping over here. Yeah, between the first two rows we're having a tiny bit of overlapping, and that also shifted the mirror point from column number 4 to column number 3. There is a common error that happens in calculation of stuff like that, which is our for loop starts from 0, but we need our calculations to start from 1. Between when you calculate something with 0, it usually ends up 0. So I'm going to add I plus 1 over here and I plus 1 over here. So basically when we have our first row, the software sees it as 0, but we need to see it as 1. So let's see if this have any effect. It does not really, and I don't think there is a... I don't know if you can make it on the screen, but there is still slight bit of overlapping, and I don't want them to overlap. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add the same... I'm going to do the same thing for our horizontal space and vertical space. I'm going to add +1 to our row variable. Basically this will guarantee we have some shift between different rows. Every time we're going to have some calculation done. We're not going to have a shift that is equaling 0. And here we go, we can see now there is no overlapping. Still the horizontal mirror point is shifted from the 4th column to the 3rd column. What we could have easily done is go back to our for loop, and instead of 0 here we can write 1, and instead of I smaller than map size we could write I equal map size. But this doesn't really matter, the effect is the same, and I'm kinda okay with how it is right now. I'm going to introduce another variable over here, and I'm going to call this variable scale. This will allow me to send information to each tile I create and tell the specific tile how big or how small I want it to be. I divided by map size allows me to have an index that shows me how much the specific tile needs to be changed to look appropriately on the map. I don't know how to explain this, so I'm going to show it and you're going to see it. As I said before, the instance create command is giving me an ID code, which I'm going to use as I showed in the previous video in order to send the variable scale into the instance that we are creating. I'm going to save the ID into a variable tile. So tile.scale is going to be the scale we just calculated. And now we're going to go into our object tile and set up this variable before we use it. Now, the create event is going to be executed before we send the data to the object. So it doesn't matter what value we set the scale to, this will be rewritten when we send the data from the controller object into the tile. I'm going to set the variable scale into 1, so if there is no difference. So if this thing here doesn't work, if this code here doesn't work, we're still going to have our tiles in a scale 1 to 1, yeah, because we set it to 1. Now I'm going to make this tiny little change. I'm going to set it as scale +1. Now, because our scale that we're calculating is going to give me value between 0 and 1, I'm going to add 1 to it because I want the smallest possible scale to be 1 and the largest possible scale to be 2. So this variable, this line of code, is going to tell each tile of the map you are how to explain it best? I'll say it like that. Since I want my tiles on the map to be small on the back, which is their original size, which is scale 1, and large on the front, which is going to be scale 2. And this is why we calculate the scale as the current row divided by total number of rows. This will give me a number between 0 and 1. If this gives me 0, it means we are on the very first row, that is indexed as 0 row. That will send an information into the tile that its scale is 0 plus 1, so it will give me a scale of 1. And if we're on the very last row, our scale that we're calculating in the controller object will give me a value of 1. And when I add another 1 to it, we'll have a value of 2, so it will be twice as large as the other tiles. And everything in between the first and the last row will be between 1 and 2 scale. You'll see this is really awesome effect, and I really like how it's going to look. Okay, now in order to apply this scaling to our objects, we need to go into the draw event. Now, we're going to remove this draw self command because it's not working for us. We're going to use a command draw sprite extended. The draw sprite command by itself requires location, what sprite, and if there is animation, what image of the animation we're in. The extended version requires a lot more data in order to draw a proper sprite the way we want it, and this information includes scaling, and this is what we're going to use. So our sprite that we want to draw is the sprite we have assigned to our object, which is by default already a built-in variable named sprite index. It's absolutely the same thing with the subimage. The subimage is the eventual animation that we're going to run. And since we don't want this to have an effect here, we're going to use the default image index. Whatever it is, we're not changing it, we're just using it. The x and y location is the x and y location, the current location x and the current location y, because we don't want to change where the tile will be drawn. Now here's the fun part. We have horizontal scale x scale and vertical scale y scale. And since we have just one variable scale, we're going to use it for both of our scaling. Our horizontal and our vertical scale is exactly the same value. Rotation means if we want to change the angle we're drawing the sprite at, and we do not want to do that, so we're just going to type 0 over here. Color is if we want to shift the color, we're going to do that later on, but for now we're going to use C white. This means there will be absolutely no change to our color scheme, our default sprite. Alpha is transparency, and I believe 0 is the default position. So the only thing we have changed at this moment is the scaling. And we have an error. Oh yeah, I have misspelled map size, because of course I have. Now let's see how this thing is going. Whoop, I have made everything transparent. I don't want to make everything transparent. So our value of draw event. So our value of alpha that I have written as 0 is supposed to be 1. Everything between 0 and 1 will give us some sort of transparency, and we don't want any sort of transparency right now for those things. Whoa! Those are some big tiles on the bottom. Okay, they are overlapping massively. Yeah, and this is what I mean. The bottom ones are much larger than the top ones. To be precise, they're exactly twice as large as the top ones. So I'm going to at least make them not overlap as bad. I'm going to order them using a built-in variable depth. Now, the depth means the order in which the different objects are drawn on the screen. It's very simple. The object that is the deepest, meaning that it has the largest depth, get drawn first, and the object that is with the smallest depth, meaning that is the shallowest, gets drawn last. So you can order them in such a way that one gets in front of the other. It's super useful if you're doing stuff like isometric stuff or stuff like that, where you need one thing to be able to get behind something else just purely visually. So at least in this way, the larger tiles are standing in front of the smaller tiles. You can't make it out right now because they are overlapping so much, but we're going to fix that as well. We're going to give them much more horizontal space. I can mess up with the scale in order to change that, or I can mess up with the horizontal and vertical spacing, and I think I'm just going to mess with that. From here starts a nice little guessing game about what numbers are going to work in our specific case, so the tiles does not quite overlap as badly as they currently are. Let's see what will happen if I do this. I'm going to have a bit of fun just messing with... Oh, this is actually perfect. Oh, goody. See, the mirror line of the different tiles is right between column 3 and 4. This is the perfect thing I wanted to happen. Yeah, but we still have some overlapping on the top rows. Let's see what happens if I put them equal. Oh yeah, we're definitely messing with the symmetry if we put them the horizontal spacing and the side spacing equal. The side spacing need to be half of the horizontal spacing, that way our mirror line is exactly in the middle. Now let's play with the top and vertical spacing. Let's see how that would look. Now we have a massive overlap on the first 2 rows. This should be clearly visible. We have massive overlap. Now if I write 4 here, will that fix the thing? I don't think it will, but let's go back at least to the last knowing working place. No, there is still overlap on the very first row. So we need to increase the spacing a bit more. So the very first row there does not overlap as badly. Because I do not want them to overlap. I want to have a mouse over function later on, so I cannot afford the mouse over function to work on two tiles at the same time. What will happen if I remove the +1 over here? Will that help or make the things worse? I am not sure really what will happen, so I'm just playing with numbers right now to see what the effects will be, and it's not helping, so I'm going to go back and just add it in. Maybe I should give it larger. What will happen if I put minus here instead of plus? I'm just playing with numbers right now, this is not important at all, but I want to see what the effect is, so I might be able to use this for something later on. Oh no, this is just shifting everything, and it makes the vertical overlapping even worse. This is not helping at all. Yeah, at least with the plus we had overlapping only in one area. We definitely need to take this back to the plus area. I'm going to increase the vertical spacing and reduce the top spacing to the half of the vertical spacing shift. Let's see how that will work out. That is still overlapping, and it's overlapping badly. There is so much space left on the bottom rows. The top rows are overlapping while the bottom rows have huge amount of space in between them, and I don't want that. What will happen if the top shifting is larger than the spacing, than the vertical spacing? That is actually looking good. That is actually looking really good, really promising. So while the horizontal thing, the spacing needs to be larger than the side thing, in the vertical side we need our top shifting to be larger than our vertical spacing. It's weird. They are working the vertical and the horizontal shifting works the other way around. Now what will happen if I apply the same logic to the horizontal shift? And we can see it's not working at all. I'll keep the horizontal shift as it is, because this is known to work. Now I'll keep our map size to a straight number. I want to see how those numbers that I have work in different map sizes. So if our map is 5 by 5, the logic is working perfectly fine. Everything is the way it should be. That's fine. If our map size is 8, let's see how that will look like. our 8 map size have some vertical overlapping on the first row. Huh. How about I give our tile shifting a connection to the map size. That way it can fit any map size. There we go. There we go. We have no overlapping on the top rows. Our bottom rows are still hugely shifted away from each other, but that's not really a big issue. The important part is we don't have shifting on top. What if I do 10 by 10 map? How will that work out for us? Oh, this is getting out of the window. This is not a good map for testing. There is still a huge overlap, but this is not... Oop, I don't want to be here. But this is not a good map size for testing. So the 8 is about the maximum of a map we can have in this game. Doesn't it? Isn't it? That's really bad. 8 by 8, it's not a really big map. 8 by 8 is actually quite limiting. I kinda wanted to be able to have bigger maps, but oh well. 8 by 8 it is. Now how about I do this? I'm going to take the entire map and shift it upwards. That will give me spacing on the bottom for user interface and stuff I would like to be on the bottom. So let's see if I push it up by 100 pixels, what will happen. Okay, we have a bit of spacing on the bottom now. Everything is pushed upwards, and this is exactly what I want to see. Now, let's do a little trick. Let's allow the player to move left and right. We're going to use our standard WASD control scheme. When I press A, I'm going to simulate my camera moving left or right. But for that to happen, I need to store another variable. I'm going to tell every tile which row the specific tile it is on. That will allow me to simulate different movement speed on each tile. I'm going to set the row in the create event as 0, and later on, well, after the create event, the controller will send the correct row to each tile. So I can use it in the A button event. So when a player presses A, we want to deduct from its X location, let's say 2 times the row number plus 1. So if we have if we're on the row number 0, we'll have 2 pixels speed, movement speed. And if you're on the row 10, we'll have 22 pixels movement speed. Now when we press D, we want the camera to move the other way around. So instead of subtracting, we want to add this to our X variable. We're not X coordinate, we're not touching our Y coordinate because this is just horizontal movement. There we go. There we go. We're having our movement set. Now you already see probably the issue. Our larger number rows are moving way faster than our small number rows. This means that the row is having too large of an effect. So I'm just going to remove the 2 times thing, and I'm going to have 5 plus. So our base speed is 5, and the row is just addition to it, it's not multiplication anymore. So the number of the row has less of an effect. There we go. Oh god, this is beautiful. This is exactly what we want. And look at this. Our mirror line is right in the center of the screen. So when I move my tiles around, it looks like I'm moving the entire world. This is going to be gorgeous. I didn't expect this to work as well as it does. Now let's go back in and see if I can have my large map now. Let's try 12 by 12. I'm just curious how that will look. Oh, there are so many tiles. Okay, we're moving them all. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Oh, we don't even see all the 12 tiles. So I guess the maximum we can have now is 10 by 10. The 11th one will be hidden by user interface, so the 11th one will be absolutely pointless. Is 10 by 10 going to be fine? 10 by 10 can be absolutely fine. There we go. Now the reason I'm not going to make vertical movement is because then I have to mess with scaling, and that is going to be a pain in the ass. If I want to move the map vertically, I need to mess up with scaling. I do not want to mess up with scaling. Scaling is going to be an awful thing to work with, so I'm not going to do that. So the next thing I'm planning to do is to create a feature that allows me to save maps into an external file and then load maps from external files. It's very simple. You basically open the file, set up the variables, and then close the file, and that's that. Or open the file, read the variables, and then just close the file. You will see how that works out. It's very simple, but that would be next time. If you want to catch it up, the best thing you can do is to subscribe to my channel, hit the stupid bell, and you'll be notified for my next video. I'll see you next time, I guess. Bye bye.